OWS has had a relatively quiet week since major May 1 actions. However, the 99ers kept up with their demands outside the Bank of America nationwide. And not to be outdone, Dallas folk joined in with demos against the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But the most audacious action came from Los Indignados during the Global Day of Action. Millions poured out worldwide to press home the message that another world is possible.
Bank of America! Bad for America!
Bank of America, bad for America. May 9th saw the Occupy movement staging several actions across the United States. Many protests were small actions at local bank branches. 99%ers comprised by a coalition of union, environmental, social justice activists, and various Occupy groups converged on Charlotte, North Carolina for the BoA shareholders meeting. Drum corps energized the protesters and new alliances were forged as testimony was given by people, including shareholder allies, impacted by the bank's criminal practices.
Bank of America, with these derivatives, is playing Russian roulette with the American economy.
The message of the day: more than any entity on Wall Street, Bank of America, propped up by U.S. government subsidies, is trashing the American economy and environment in the name of its own profits. Another action was held in Charlotte, North Carolina at the ALEC Spring Task Force Summit on May 11th. The American Legislative Exchange Council has been in Occupy sites for nearly a year.
They're nefarious. They've been around since the mid-70s, and they've written all the laws, the minimum mandatory sentencing laws, truth in sentencing, and felony and misdemeanor laws. They've increased the provisions on them so that it would incarcerate more and more inmates, more and more people, more and more Americans. And then they wrote the law, the Prison Industries Act, so that it would allow private corporations access to that inmate labor, and they've moved jobs from the private sector into the behind the prison fences, put it in the hands of the inmates. The corporations are making vast wealth off of this. We're losing our jobs, and so once I discovered that and saw the different laws that they've been writing, how they're trying to suppress the voters' rights now, and take the rights away and disenfranchise the elderly and the students, those without, driver's licenses. I just thought we have to come out, we have to stop this. They're wrong. It's wrong for us, it's wrong for America.
A nonprofit policy organization with over 2,000 legislative members and 300 corporate members, ALEC created the model legislation for anti-union and anti-immigrant bills in several states. Some watchdog groups have filed complaints with the IRS, among other federal agencies, that ALEC is a corporate lobbying group masquerading as a charity. Protest pressure and adverse publicity have shown enough light on ALEC to cause several major corporations and some legislators to cut ties. On the surface, OWS has had a relatively quiet week since major May 1st actions. Occupy groups from all over the country spent time in meetings organizing and preparing for upcoming G8 and NATO actions. There was, however, plenty of community outreach connecting city budgets to global austerity measures. Occupy continued to forge alliances with neighborhood and community groups, bringing the message that struggles here are connected to struggles around the world. Austerity policies demand that working people sacrifice their salaries for basic services while profits of the wealthy are protected. The 99ers are saying it loud and saying it proud. May Day was only the beginning. The movement is warming up with the streets it takes. OWS and its allies have entered a struggle against capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy, and authority. It would be difficult to find a bigger symbol of that power structure than Carlos Slim, who controls 80% of the telecom industry and continues to expand in the U.S. and Latin America. Forbes' richest man in the world received an honorary degree on May 11th from George Washington University. Occupy DC was there to support a rally against the university honoring an empire built on the backs of the Mexican people and rampant global economic inequality. In stark contrast to Slim is a man who has occupied a DC sidewalk in front of the Canadian Embassy since April 24th. OWS Week spoke with the former executive who calls himself Start Loving about his hunger strike against CO2 emissions and tar sands energy sources.
In the last 2.5 years, I've done 135 days worth of water-only hunger strike in 3 major campaigns. 35 days up on Capitol Hill, and then in the last year, 100 days in 2 50-day hunger strikes. It's taken quite a toll on my body. And they were all good campaigns. About 2 weeks ago, this clarity hit me, however. My body had been pulling me toward it. Can you see what that says? Till enough are seen dying for it, CO2 won't stop. Canada is expecting to get $2 trillion out of the tar sands. Canada isn't the problem. They're one of the major problems. They're expecting to get $2 trillion. What's it going to take to stop a government that thinks that they have access to $2 trillion? Nothing less than people putting their bodies on the line.
Halfway across the nation, on May 12th, in Texas, Occupy Dallas joined in solidarity with other activists in a rally against TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. TPP is an international trade and investment pact currently being negotiated between the U.S. and countries throughout the Pacific Rim. Corporations behind TPP include Bank of America, Koch Industries, Citigroup, Pfizer, several big oil firms, Monsanto, and others.
Mic check! TPP negotiators! This is the American people! We did not agree! With your decision! To keep your negotiations secret!
TPP held its 12th major round of negotiations, in which 600 corporate lobbyists have been given special status to review documents and advise negotiators. But the general public has been barred from reviewing U.S. proposals. TPP protests have been held in many Pacific Rim countries, yet this backroom deal that further enriches the 1% at the expense of family farms, indigenous rights, internet freedom, and other mainstays of the 99% has remained in the shadows, thanks to corporate media. May 12th was a global day of action called by Los Indignados, Occupy and allied social movements around the world. Having shown in 2011 another world is possible, the struggle continues in 2012. The rallying cry for the day was for massive protests against austerity, corruption, human rights violations, censorship, police brutality, and corporate greed. Huge demonstrations were held in over 60 cities across Spain. Los Indignados returned to Puerta del Sol in Madrid, taking the square for assemblies, performances, workshops, and discussions on their work since May 15, 2011. Protesters also targeted banks responsible for the Spanish and global financial crises. The Spanish government, which recently cracked down on protest movements, warned that camps would not be allowed in any square and followed through on their warning with brutal clearance as night fell. Occupiers in London returned to St. Paul's Cathedral across from the London Stock Exchange, then marched through London on a Meet the 1% tour of various banks and institutions whose greed is responsible for the global financial crisis. Hundreds of thousands of protesters joined Spain and England with huge displays of human spirit in Amsterdam, Brussels, Russia, Tel Aviv, Lisbon, approximately 400 cities spanning the continents. One can see third world countries collapsing under obscene debt while their populations face drought, starvation, civil war, violent repression, all direct results of resource and labor extraction by the 1%. One can also see first world countries falling down the ladder's rungs into austerity and disorder as their rulers turn eyes towards them. The Global 99 endures a vast range of penalty and poverty, but one of the major reasons for the global awakening is the realization that no one is protected from the pillage of the elite. This earth, this sphere of life, water, air and light is all we have. Humanity is making plans, and those plans are based on the fact that there is no planet B.
Well, I once read years ago that A.J. Muste, the great peace activist, pacifist, say that our challenge was to essentially face a big block of ice and chip away at it. The ice being the institutional, corporate-dominated capitalism that we now face that is destroying the world today. And the activist community with our ice picks literally chipping away at it. So in one sense, I think that we have to always have a long-range view. I don't mean by that to say that we should be overly patient. I think we have to be somewhat impatient because of the situation that we exist in today. But at the same time, we have to be realistic about our ability to deal with this huge chunk of ice that we face, this big block of concentrated power, corporate power. So I think the challenge for us is to stay steady, to stay determined, to even stay hopeful in the face of this huge challenge, but at the same time really recognize that that we have to move quickly and move strongly. Again, I think that today I see more opportunity than I've ever seen in all my years as an organizer. A better opportunity to reach people. People everywhere you go are talking about the economy, the weather that's changing rapidly, really screwed up because of climate change. They're talking about the war. They're talking about all these things because it's touching everyone's life in a bigger way. So that offers us an opportunity to really reach people. They're asking us, what do you think? How do you think we should deal with this? And I think we've got to come forward with some real visions. And I think one of those visions for the future is to talk about the conversion of the military-industrial complex away from perpetual war to help to creating technologies like national rail systems, a solar society, things like that give us a slight chance to begin to deal with the coming ravages of climate change, and that will essentially create more jobs, and it will give workers who today are locked into this military production system, give them an opportunity to do something that they really believe in, building a rail system to connect every corner of the nation. Those are the kind of things that will in fact bring more jobs and will give people pride in their work, and maybe, just maybe, help deal with this coming reality that we face today called climate change.
The image of US servicemen returning home from wars abroad is as routine as the images of the many wars that the US has consistently been involved in ever since the Second World War. But on arriving back to the US, the realities of returning to civilian life after multiple tours of duty has proven more than some have been able to handle. Many Iraq and Afghanistan veterans have turned against the very system that they believed was serving the people when they first volunteered to join the armed forces to fight for their country.